right. You can't make this shit up. The flagship premier podcast of the Jay and Washington Network. We are your hosts, Joel Hawksley on the right, David Washington on the left, our producer, John DeMaria, producer extraordinaire of 7th Legion Multimedia. Okay, here we go. Today on the show, we look at Florida's Democratic Party and how they followed the primary ballot process. Explain that to Representative Dean Phillips from Minnesota, who recently announced his intent to run for president. We'll take a look at this situation to help you, our viewers and listeners, sort out the truth on you can't make this shit up. Let's go.
David, I don't understand this one. I've read it and I've reread it, and it just makes I can't put my listen. There's a lot of things I can understand, but this one is all over the map.
I read the article. I said, forget it. I am not going to go into the bylaws and rules of the nominating process. Forget it. It's just too convoluted. The rules that the parties have in regards to, who's a state committee man or a delegate or this and that, and how, delegates are chosen in proportionalship. And I'm saying this is mind boggling. And if the public understood these processes that are in place just to represent the party and represent them as Democrats or Republicans, would just make your mind explode. And I'm like,
So David, they could always take a moment. It's only like less than $10. You can go on Amazon. You can buy my book, get through all the crap about me, because I kind of introduce a lot about who I am, and you can read all about the party, at least the Republican Party, and I talk about some of the strange differences. Like the Republicans, we actually are selected or voted for every 4 years, and we're proportioned for the entire voting population. Democrats are only representative of Democrats. So, like, I could have six committee men, six committee women,
right.
and you could have just one in that same
County.
that same precinct,
Right.
just because you only
Count the
represent the Democrats. But then we truly do democracy in the Republican Party, whereas the Democrat Party has all kinds of extra things like super delegates, and those votes are heavier than this and that, and it gets confusing to the regular regular voter, or the regular citizen that's just trying to read how this is working. So this is why you get people like the No Label Party trying to come out and say, "Look, pay attention. They're Here's what they say. They're just as fucked up as they can be."
Right.
So let's try something new. And that's what they're doing. They're trying something new. But yes, David, this is confusing. This is why we get lawsuits. This is why we have internal stuff, like we're talking about sex in the Republican Party. And now we're talking about selection processes.
And the Democrats have said, well, Biden's the only one who has completed the application, checked all the boxes, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And therefore, he's the one who's going to be on the ballot for the Democrats. Well, since he's the only one for the presidential preference election, well, there's really no reason to have an election. People like Dean Phillips, who just announced his campaign, said, wait a second, that's not fair. No one contacted us within the appropriate amount of time to make sure that our application was in. And we think, or they think, that you're excluding a good portion of the Democratic population demographic who want to see an alternative. And therefore, as recently as today, as announced on the different socials, the Florida Democratic Party is being sued for their process in selecting those candidates who will be on the presidential preference ballot. And this is it's I want to know more. I
So,
want the ability to have Dean Phillips and others on the ballot, so that I can make, you know, my choice very clear. And
well, it's interesting.
one more thing about the no labels. Thank you for bringing that up. We have we are in conversation. J&W is in conversation with the no labels party to have representatives come and speak to us, to be interviewed, to be on the You Can't Make This
No,
Shit
because we can't make
Up
this shit up. You can't. Look,
podcast.
look, they're just as relevant as my party, your party. They're truly thinking about having a real viable candidate on their ballot. But back to the Democrats, is this like the primary is the presidential primary being moved and all this other stuff? This is done by the parties themselves. So you guys could just eliminate the party the presidential preference primary altogether.
Right.
You don't have to have it because you guys could say we've already basically nominated somebody,
Exactly.
and the Republicans could do the same. But we have too many candidates in our primary process. So it's an interesting thing. People don't realize the primaries are taxpayer dollars paying for it when it should be paid for 100% by the party.
Agreed. Agreed. Well, I mean, the Democrats have their process, the Republicans have their process. It's unfortunate that candidates like Representative Dean Phillips, is that correct?
I
Dean
believe that's the
Phillips,
name. Yeah.
from Minnesota, who's got some great ideas, will not be on the ballot unless this lawsuit changes that outcome.
Well, you can't make this shit up. The Democrats don't want Dean Phillips on the ballot, so they're gonna they're gonna have to pay for it in court.
Indeed. We
So,
don't know, and forgive us. The news came out today, and did not have an opportunity to dwell more into the news about the lawsuit. Not too sure if this came from any particular campaign, specifically the Dean Phillips for President campaign. However, there is this lawsuit, and we are waiting for a response from the Florida Democratic Party, and we'll maybe talk about it a little bit later in another podcast.
again, David, this one confused me. Let me. Uh,
Oh,
you have the
we'll
article.
put it in the notes.
Yeah,
We'll put it
you
in
got to read
in
you
the
got to read the
in the
article.
comments later.
This is just one of those things that it's very difficult, even
Yeah.
for a Politico, to understand why they would why would they put this much effort into these rules.
Again, it makes my head spin. Just the rules, the bylaws, and it makes my head spin. And that's one of the reasons why I personally and professionally work outside of the Democratic Party, for some of the things that we do, because the party kind of shackles you. It limits your ability to be effective. It limits our ability
Well,
to be effective for our community.
and that's why So let's talk about the Republicans for a moment, just
Okay,
because we're talking about rules and things. Uh, Evan Powers, Evan Powers is the was is the vice chairman of the Republican Party here in Florida, and Ziegler has been accused of a crime, not been charged. I'm going to sure I say that again. Has not been charged with a crime. A police report was submitted. It was highly redacted,
correct.
but now the Republicans have come up and censored him. Which, when the local party censured somebody, they went, the locals went crazy. But now the censure was unanimous against against Ziegler, who's not even been charged with a crime, and it's because it's a distraction. No, it's because power has had the right to use the rules against the chairman. The chairman now loses his $120,000 salary. He's only getting paid $1 because he still has to be paid.
Correct.
And then they have an elections,
Set for
set for
January.
January, and it's like this is all a game that's playing out, that's distracting from the real work they should be doing.
Mhm.
Parties should be, if they're going to exist, they should be doing one thing. They should be recruiting new people to their cause, and they should be picking the right people for the right job. Oh wait, what's that? Sounds familiar. Thank you very much, guys. This is You Can't Make This Shit Up Because You Can't. David Washington, Joel Hawksley, picking the right people for the right jobs at the right time.
Indeed.
Like, share,
Comments. We want your
and,
comments.
and
Subscribe.
subscribe. That's
Yeah, subscribe. Subscribe across the board. All of our socials. The newsletter, the Informer. Good stuff. Go visit our blog.
Have a good day and have a happy holiday.